Welcome to this presentation by the Youth, Media and Culture Network on empowering Generation Z through public service media. What is the Youth, Media and Culture Network? Well, we're a small group of international scholars from the UK, Canada and Germany. We have strong connections to our national public service media, or PSM, and we are addressing how PSM can better engage with and cater for 12 to 16-year-olds. I'm Rachel Phillips, a PhD student and research assistant to the network. Today, I'll be introducing and outlining this talk, and I'll see you at the end to talk about our conclusions. 3 researchers in our network are speaking today, and our presentation is split into 3 sections. First off is Professor Lizzie Jackson from London South Bank University. She'll be outlining the background to the topic, defining Young Generation Z, and explaining the concept of their preferred media and communications type, a media universe. She'll then explain the problem that we are addressing through our research, which relates to a mismatch between what public service media is largely providing and what young people aged 12 to 16 really want. Professor Charles Davis from Ryerson University, Canada, and Professor Dr. Christine Horst-Ishak from the Applied University of Cologne will then describe 1 or 2 proposed solutions to set up the audience discussion which follows. As you might have guessed from our speakers, our research and its findings are international, and this reflects the globalized media landscape young people navigate, which is very often distinctly different from their respective national public service media contexts. Despite this, a core belief of our research group is that the mission of public service media should be upheld even in these new global contexts. And actually, a key research finding of ours is that younger members of Generation Z are extremely open to the idea of consuming media that informs them about global issues, enhances well-being, and emphasizes personal development. Let's start off today by defining Generation Z. I'll hand over now to Professor Lizzie Jackson.
In investigating media engagement among younger people, we see that young people as a category is too broad. We currently think of young people as Gen Z or Zoomers. This is the generation born between 1997 and 2012. They're the first demographic group to grow up in a world in which communication is overwhelmingly online and connected. Gen Z are pivotals. That means they share some behaviors and attitudes with millennials, but they're also developing their own generational characteristic attitudes, aptitudes, aspirations, and anxieties. As this demographic grows in size, it's also segmenting, because subsequent annual cohorts will respond differently to cultural and global events depending on their age. A particularly challenging segment of the youth audience are people between the ages of 12 and 15, who are part of the Gen Z cohort called Little Z. They're sandwiched between tweens and older adolescents. These are 2 groups with very different life situations and capabilities. 12 to 15-year-olds are a micro-generation. They have unique requirements due to the biological development effects they experience, and also due to their unique experiences with media and communications technologies. This cohort, the one that we've been looking at particularly, 14 to 16-year-olds, and also the micro-generation of 12 to 15-year-olds, has been particularly impacted by COVID-19. And there is currently much societal and scholarly concern about their social development, educational attainment as well, but most of all, their mental health. There were already concerns about screen time usage, as well as digital and social media addiction. But the pandemic has recontextualized and reaffirmed these concerns. As we hopefully move into a post-pandemic world, there's a strong need to critically examine the media offering for this cohort to make sure that their experiences are represented on the screen and to address the concurrent issues impacting them today. I've just outlined some of the reasons young people are thought of as at risk but culturally, they're also constructed as risk. Gen Zers are early, eager adopters of new media. However, they lack maturation and emotional intelligence. And they often use digital media in ways that can be disruptive, but also transgressive or even nonsensical. Several TikTok trends spring to mind. There have been numerous reports recently that have investigated this cohort, both pre and mid-pandemic, all offering valuable insights. As the Youth Media and Culture Network, we've been drawing together academic studies to get the bigger picture of 14 to 16-year-olds in the Western world. We've also narrowed down what we're looking at to media and communications, and in particular, media for good. That's public service media or its equivalents. This is in order to find out what media services or media experiences this age group enjoy that could support their development. In brief, the largest recent review of digital media and children is a new collection of scholarly papers aggregated in the Routledge Companion to Digital Media and Children 2021. This is a marvelous, huge new collection. Heather Horst and Luke Gaspard from Sydney, Australia show, in particular in one of the chapters, how young people now visualize media as media worlds that they help to create. This chimes with the analysis of young Gen Zers and their media use identified by German academic Volker Grasmuck in a series of debates that we ran as the Youth Media and Culture Network that we hosted last year, which were very well attended. We all like imaginary worlds. As a species, we're naturally drawn to imaginary worlds, and this echoes the natural play patterns of young children. We are, in effect, going back to those early play worlds when we read Gulliver's Travels or become immersed in Game of Thrones. As one of the longest running BBC television cult series for older children and adults, Doctor Who is, we would argue, a media world, as is The Hobbit and Harry Potter, as is World of Warcraft, as is also influencers' live streams with their associated events, participation and merchandising. These could all be media worlds. This is a way of thinking about media and communications that's outside of the old framing of radio and television channels. 12 to 16-year-olds are certainly breaking away from their parents and figures in authority. They usually have low autonomy and little agency. Some of these traits carry on as they become the older teenagers. Both younger and older teens are highly aspirational. They wish to change the world, and they want to help each other, and also society at large. They're concerned with climate change, as they will inherit what previous generations have crafted. Above all, our younger teenagers want a place to go, real or virtual. They want to participate, they want to have agency and to feel truly engaged in their media worlds. So back to the problem that we're investigating. How are young people aged 12 to 16 engaging with media that supports their maturation as cultural citizens, able to engage in democracy and other empowering processes? Claire Hudson, editor of the BBC's homepage, asked us 2 years ago to try and find out why 14 to 16-year-olds are engaging, or 12 to 16-year-olds are engaging with media and communications in, according to Claire, a completely different way from other audiences. We're therefore researching the media habits of this age group. However, it's also been important to consider the internal organisational issues within public service media, which might mean that public service media are not able to produce media worlds suitable. Dr. Michal Glowacki from the University of Warsaw and I carried out a 4-year study funded by the Polish Science Foundation to find out whether public service media are aligned in their practices with contemporary high technology firms. These are firms which include those who are able to make media worlds. The study was called Organisational Culture of Public Service Media, People, Values and Processes. And as I said, it researched the internal culture of successful high technologies in 10 cities in North America and Europe. It was a very large study. And we then, once we crunched the data, we then compared these findings with the internal culture of the largest local public service media in each city. And there were dramatic differences. So firstly, here's a selection of the main findings. PSMs, public service media, were found to be fortresses, resistant to change. Second, there is very low interdepartmental creative interaction. Third, the decision-making structures are not fast or agile. They're terribly slow, too slow. Fourth, the commissioning structure is parental. It's just buying with an editorial advisor, it's buying stuff. There's no robust ongoing framework for collaborative creative working with other firms and other skills and creatives to bring these sort of fresh awareness and fresh skills which are needed. The audience is also not truly considered as stakeholders. Young people have low involvement in much public service media content, not all, but much. All these issues preclude the production, and these internal issues preclude the production of suitable media worlds for young Gen Z. So if we consider how public service media is supporting young citizens, we're considering whether public service media is meeting its public service mission for young audiences. This is likely to be a specific kind of content that's not likely to be educational, as a parental tone won't work, as I've just demonstrated earlier. In addition, older societal conceptions of citizenship that focus primarily on inculcating a sense of national identity are evolving towards newer concepts, newer conceptions of cultural citizenship. Multicultural societies face particular challenges in fostering cultural citizenship. Furthermore, in the digital age, this is certainly associated with an active involvement of youth in media production to voice their concerns, because media are the central resource for cultural citizenship, and citizenship is based on participation. To conclude my section then, the huge problem for public service media is therefore how to engage with young people rather than merely make media for their presumed consumption. I'm going to hand over now to Christine and Charles, who will talk through one or two potential solutions to our research question: how to engage 12 to 16-year-olds in public service media.
Our research identifies two pathways that PSM can use to engage young audiences and foster cultural citizenship: an emphasis on co-creation, co-design, and on eudaimonic media. Traditionally, educators, researchers, and practitioners have approached young audiences in terms of critical media literacy and the protection of minors. This perspective, however, on adolescence follows a top-down approach that positions young people as passive recipients of information about media. As young people are typically interviewed but not involved in the design of new formats and content, such offers only tentatively allow them to take a more active role in co-creation or co-determination. We suggest here that novel participatory forms of media production with this age group will help to redress this issue. Co-design refers to a bundle of practices intended to bring the voice of the audience, consumer, or user into the innovation process. It includes ethnographic study of user practices, facilities for soliciting and capturing audience feedback, aggregation and selection of user-generated content, co-design methodologies such as design thinking, service design, and living labs. Co-design is an approach to innovation that has entered the mainstream, although it is not practiced widely by PSM. PSM experiences with co-design are relatively recent, and some scholarly assessment of the results express skepticism that the effort is worth the costs. However, a recent workshop on young people and PSM held by InnoPSM, the research network on innovation in public service media policies, emphasized the need for better research and practices on ways of involving young people in PSM content innovation, concluding that two key research issues and policy needs are to create more nuanced understandings of microgenerations within the broad category young people, and to explore participatory research practices for deeper understanding of young people's contexts and to facilitate co-creation. One example of participatory and collaborative project drew together researchers from the University of Westminster, producers from CBBC, and most importantly, children aged 9 to 10 and 11 to 13. The children were asked to be product testers of Adventure Rock, a new virtual world for children the BBC was trialing. The young consultants came up with rigorous changes that needed to be made, but also it became clear they had very specific preferences. The two groups had also different technical abilities and slightly different gender orientations. Lastly, the younger ones wanted a world where they could fly, do anything that defied any scientific or other rules. The older children were much more interested in doing what adults do. In another example of co-creation, a major public broadcaster commissioned one of us to help them understand how they could better provide content to young adults with smart speakers. We recruited participants from among university students who were pleased to help the broadcaster innovate services. We used experience sampling methodology and a living lab approach to capture users' insights at different moments throughout the day. We found that participants provided clear insights into how they wanted to use and improve the experience of news, music, and other information from smart speakers.
Hello, I'm Charles Davis from Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. Regarding media content, much more effort has been expended to understand and counter the harmful effects of media on young people than to understand and foster media innovation that contributes to young persons' eudaimonia or well-being. Conventional psychology focuses on relieving mental anguish to help patients return to normalcy, but positive psychology is concerned with optimizing life experience by fostering a deeper understanding of positive character strengths, feelings, and emotions. For this reason, we're pleased to see growing recognition of the importance of incorporating principles of positive psychology in story design for young people. Research in some areas of media practice demonstrate that media can have positive effects that go beyond hedonic pleasure to include elicitation of eudaimonic enhancing attributes. Instead of focusing on the negative effects of media, positive media psychology examines the potential constructive uses of media to improve psychological well-being and develop pro-social behaviors and traits such as meaningfulness, purpose, moral elevation, gratitude, admiration, inclusiveness, compassion, courage, and resilience. Positive media psychology is concerned with hedonic, eudaimonic, and transcendent media content on multiple platforms, including social media, games, augmented reality, film and TV, and it empirically studies and analyzes the effects of media. We suggest that principles of positive psychology need to be brought into the media design process. Organizations interested in young people's well-being recognize that some already existing media content contains character-enhancing lessons and experiences. For example, Common Sense Media provides recommendations to parents about the character-building implications of specific films and TV shows. This approach could be extended beyond film and TV to include other media. For example, several studies demonstrate that pro-social gaming among young people is associated with greater empathy, pro-social thoughts, positive affect, and less aggression. Participants' descriptions of eudaimonic gaming experiences include feelings of moral virtue, altruism, positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Eudaimonic effects of gaming include a sense of connection with other players and joining together as a team, self-reflective thoughts as players take on personas or consider their own reactions to in-game challenges, feelings of empathy toward other characters, and feelings of elevation when a player makes a moral choice for the good of a character or for a team. Researchers consider that elevation derived from gaming may be a particularly important positive psychological resource for adolescents by taking the focus off the self, contributing to the cultivation of real-life relationships and self-awareness while supporting progress towards self-identity as an adult. Psychology has made important contributions to innovation of media content. In cases such as the children's television shows Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Advances in psychology now open the door to combining principles from positive psychology with co-creation involving young audiences in order to bring eudaimonic effects of media deliberately into the media innovation process at the ideation and design stages, and to translate insights from positive psychology into terms that strengthen the public good mission and mandate of public service media. It might be imagined that positive media psychology merely takes neoliberal individualism one step further. But in fact, as we've seen, many of the character strengths promoted by positive psychology are pro-social. They have to do with empathy, compassion, group resilience, gratitude, understanding, acceptance, and so forth. We believe that positive psychology provides a foundation for rethinking cultural citizenship, something that's very needed in a time of globalization and apparent social fragmentation that's driven by digital media. I'll pass the mic back to Christine to comment. Thank you.
PSM institutionalized the principle of the common good based on the participation of citizens in a democracy. Having access and participate in the making of culture by using the media is a core element of cultural citizenship, a new approach to citizenship because the life worlds of 12 to 16-year-olds are on one hand coined by diversity and on the other hand by mediatization. Media access and participation hence became the most important resource for cultural protection. The affordances of digital media invite an active involvement in media production and opportunities for young people to voice their concerns and to explore solutions. Only PSM in that sense can provide good media for young people to keep them engaged in the public media project, particularly media that informs, educates, is inclusive and emancipates. However, the few PSM organizations who have established channels to reach young audiences have had limited success. In an international perspective, we find solutions to solve the problem of younger generations turning their backs to PSM. The German content network Funk, a public service enterprise that runs on YouTube and Instagram, has more than 140 different formats, of which a rising amount is concerned with information and edutainment, and hence strives to create public value. Funk's target audience are young people between 14 and 19. The publicity of at least one Funk format meanwhile reaches over 80% among young people. Funk content is increasingly retrieved via Instagram, where it has over 650,000 subscribers. However, Funk is the smallest member of the PSM broadcasting family, and it is not sufficient to reach and address all young media users sufficiently. And this can also be linked to the rather sporadic involvement of their target audience to co-create content. Only few formats in Funk actively ask their viewers to send suggestions for new and relevant topics. On the long run, a commentary section alone will also not be sufficient to engage with the audience, particularly with those who are used to connect and create.
So, to conclude, our research has found that 12 to 16-year-olds are a unique microgeneration, preoccupied with forming their identity, anti-establishment, but concerned about the world and its people. They are aspirational. This is a good fit with public service media, whose mission includes having universal access and appeal, and supporting the public as empowered citizens. The problem is, PSM haven't got the right organizational framework and mindset to consistently engage with this specific but highly important group who want a sense of place, such as a media world, participation, and agency. To create the right kind of organizational structure, PSMs will need to support collaborative working between types of media producer, both internally and externally. Merely commissioning content isn't a sufficiently supportive framework for the construction of media worlds, which requires multiple skills. If this doesn't happen, other producers will fill the gap from the commercial sector, and we can already see this happening. Furthermore, we need a different kind of public service media that picks up young people where they are and involves them actively in content production for the common good. In the future, public service media have to find ways to rejuvenate and align to the needs now and in future. This is also an investment in the future of public service media, and most probably the common good principle in the media sector. Finally, there is a need to bring scholarship on eudaimonic media to bear on innovation addressing young adult audiences. In particular, more media stories and narratives that speak to the issues and challenges of personal character development and citizenship facing young adults. What could this look like? It could look like involving young people in design jams to create stories that illustrate and explore development of specific character strengths such as wisdom, courage, humanity, justice. We can also look to people who are already doing it, such as Common Sense Media. Other media scholars have also identified stories in media that communicate character strengths, but so far the incorporation of principles of positive psychology in story co-design is relatively unexplored territory. By combining principles from positive psychology with co-creation involving young audiences, ways can be found to bring intended eudaimonic effects of media deliberately into the media innovation process at the ideation and design stages, and to translate insights from positive psychology into terms that strengthen the public good mission and the mandate of public service media. If you'd like to know more about the network, you can go to the website on the screen, where you can find our recent responses to 2 BBC Ofcom consultations and recordings of 3 events that we hosted in March that discussed many of this presentation's ideas in more detail. We're currently in the lengthy process of applying for transatlantic funding to carry out some work with young people in the UK, Canada, Germany, and hopefully even more locations. Thank you again for inviting us to speak to you today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.